Mark Wilson set out for a peaceful hike with his wife, Emily, on a crisp autumn morning. By noon, he was dead at the bottom of a rocky slope. Emily claimed it was a tragic accident, but her smartwatch told a story she never expected to share. Every heartbeat, every pause, every step was recorded, and what investigators found in that data turned a grieving widow into a prime suspect. This is the case of a murder exposed by technology, a story where the truth was hidden not in the wilderness, but on her own wrist. The trail stretched endlessly beneath the towering pines, their needles glistening with dew under the morning sun. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and moss. Birds chirped in the distance, their songs echoing through the vast emptiness of the forest. It was the kind of morning hikers dream of: perfect skies, perfect temperatures, and silence broken only by the crunch of boots on gravel. For Mark and Emily Wilson, it was supposed to be a day of peace, a chance to mend the cracks that had quietly formed in their marriage. They parked their SUV near the trailhead just after sunrise. Mark had insisted on bringing his expensive camera, wanting to capture the panoramic views from the ridge. Emily, dressed in sleek activewear, wore her smartwatch like a badge of commitment to her fitness goals. To anyone passing by, they looked like the ideal couple on a weekend getaway. No one could have guessed that only one of them would make it back alive. The trail wound upward, narrowing in places where thick roots coiled across the dirt like sleeping snakes. Emily kept glancing at her watch, tracking her heart rate, her steps, and her progress toward the calorie goal she had set earlier. Mark moved at a relaxed pace, occasionally stopping to photograph the wildflowers that bloomed in bursts of purple and yellow along the path. They barely spoke, but Emily didn't mind the silence. It was easier than words that might lead to arguments neither of them wanted to have today. To by mid-morning, the sun climbed higher, casting harsh beams through the canopy and painting jagged shadows across the ground. They had reached a section of the trail where the trees thinned, opening to a breathtaking view of the valley below. Jagged cliffs framed the horizon, their edges sharp against the blue sky. It was here that Mark knelt to adjust the settings. On his camera, his back to Emily, his attention completely absorbed by the landscape. Hours later, his body would be found near a rocky incline a short distance away, head tilted awkwardly against a boulder, a crimson pool spreading beneath his skull. The scene suggested a tragic accident, a slip on loose gravel, a tumble down the slope, and an impact that ended his life instantly. That was the story Emily told the search and rescue team when they found her wandering near the trailhead. Her face pale, her voice trembling as she described how he lost his footing while taking pictures. It was a story that made sense at first. Accidents happen in places like this all the time. The rugged terrain leaves little room for error, and one misstep can turn fatal in seconds. The rescuers believed her. The initial reports labeled the death as an unfortunate mishap. Mark Wilson, age 38, victim of a fall during a hike with his wife. Case closed. But nothing about that day was as simple as it appeared. In her grief, or what seemed like grief, Emily made a critical mistake. She mentioned her smartwatch when investigators asked for details about their hike. She explained how it had tracked her steps and heart rate. She even suggested they use the data to confirm her account, perhaps thinking it would make her look cooperative. Instead, it set off a chain reaction that would tear her story apart piece by piece. When detectives downloaded the information from Emily's smartwatch, the numbers told a story she never intended to share. A story of pauses and surges, of stillness, and sudden bursts of speed. A timeline that didn't align with the calm narrative she delivered through trembling lips. It was the first sign that Mark's death wasn't an accident at all. It was a puzzle, and the answers were buried not in the dirt of the forest, But in the silent records stored on Emily's wrist, detectives began piecing together the day. Using Emily's statement, according to her, the hike started around 8 in the morning. They reached the ridge by 10, spent some time taking pictures, and then tragedy struck around 10:30. She claimed Mark had been near the edge, trying to capture the perfect shot, when his foot slipped. She said she ran for help immediately, her heart pounding in panic, screaming his name into the wind. On the surface, it sounded convincing, a classic accident in a remote area with no witnesses. But when the smartwatch data came back, the cracks in her story widened. Investigators expected the device to support her timeline. Instead, it revealed something disturbing. The watch had been logging Emily's steps, heart rate, and stress levels throughout the morning. At 9:12 a.m., long before Emily claimed anything, unusual happened. Her heart rate spiked sharply. It wasn't the kind of increase caused by climbing uphill. It was the kind triggered by adrenaline and fear. Minutes later, the step count stopped altogether. For nearly 30 minutes, there was no recorded movement. Not a single step. This detail gnawed at detectives. If Emily had been hiking on a steep trail during that time, the watch would have logged continuous activity. The gap suggested she had been still for a prolonged period. What could cause someone to stop moving for half an hour in the middle of a hike? The answer they feared was that something significant had occurred, something that contradicted her calm narrative. The data showed another sharp spike at 10:15 a.m., followed by a rapid drop in stress and a sudden surge of movement. Emily had covered nearly 2 miles in record time, her pace faster than anything recorded earlier in the hike. To investigators, it suggested she wasn't running for help immediately after an accident. She was running after something else, possibly after staging the scene or making sure no one else was nearby. Meanwhile, the autopsy revealed more troubling clues. Mark's injuries didn't match a single accidental fall. The fracture at the back of his skull was severe, but there was also a smaller, more focused impact near his temple. It looked less like a stumble and more like blunt force trauma. Could it have happened during the fall? Possibly, but unlikely. It raised the haunting possibility that Mark had been struck before tumbling down the slope. Detectives returned to the trail, retracing the couple's steps. Volunteers scoured the surrounding area, hoping to find something Emily might have left behind. The first breakthrough came from an analysis of Mark's phone. The device had stopped sending signals at 9:20 a.m., but its last GPS location didn't match the spot where his body was found. For almost an hour after that, the phone remained near a cliffside about half a mile away from the main trail. This discovery turned everything upside down. If Mark had fallen where Emily said he did, his phone should have been nearby. Instead, it suggested he had been somewhere else entirely before ending up at the bottom of the slope. Investigators began to suspect Emily had moved the body, or at least misled them about the location of the incident. The case was no longer about an accident. It was about secrets hidden in the wilderness and evidence buried in digital footprints. The smartwatch had opened the door, but detectives knew there was more to uncover. They needed proof, something physical to match the digital inconsistencies. The search wasn't over. It was only beginning, and the next discovery would make it impossible for Emily to keep her story straight. The investigation shifted from a simple accident review to a potential homicide case. Detectives focused on the cliffside where Mark's phone last pinged. It was a secluded area off the main trail, accessible only by a narrow path hidden behind thick underbrush. When search teams arrived, the ground bore faint signs of disturbance: scattered leaves, compressed soil, and something metallic glinting beneath a layer of dirt. It was a hiking pole, half buried and smeared with what looked like dried mud. Closer inspection revealed faint reddish stains near the tip. The pole was bagged and rushed to the lab. DNA tests later confirmed the blood belonged to Mark Wilson. The presence of the pole raised new questions. If Mark had slipped, why would a blood-stained hiking pole be found far from his body? It suggested an injury occurred before he ever reached the slope where he supposedly fell. This finding lined up with the autopsy results. The second impact wound on Mark's temple, smaller and more focused than the primary fracture, could have been caused by a blunt object, like the end of a hiking pole. Forensic experts concluded that Mark was likely struck during an altercation before falling or being moved. Attention now turned to Emily. Investigators dug into her life beyond the trail. Financial records exposed a troubling motive. 2 months before the trip, Emily had quietly doubled Mark's life insurance policy, increasing the payout to $1.5 million. At the same time, she had been drowning in debt, credit cards maxed out, personal loans piling up, and overdue notices arriving in waves. The hiking trip, once portrayed as a romantic getaway, began to look like a calculated opportunity. But financial stress alone wasn't enough for an arrest. Detectives needed to connect Emily to the staged accident. That's when they examined Mark's phone data more closely. The GPS history revealed he had lingered near the cliffside for nearly 40 minutes before his phone went offline. During that time, Emily's smartwatch data showed she was in the same location, her movements recorded in tight, restless circles. What happened during those 40 minutes? Investigators theorized that the couple argued, tensions boiling over, until Emily snapped. The evidence suggested she struck Mark with a hiking pole, possibly during a heated confrontation. He might have collapsed, but wasn't dead immediately. What came next was even more chilling. Emily dragging or forcing him toward the slope to make his death appear accidental. Still, the detectives knew speculation wasn't enough. They needed Emily's smartwatch data to tell the complete story. The watch had already exposed inconsistencies, but its full potential had yet to be tapped. Most people didn't realize these devices recorded more than just steps and heart rate. Stress monitoring, GPS trails, elevation changes. All of it could become critical evidence. They pulled every byte of data from her account, including logs stored on the cloud. When analysts overlaid Emily's GPS route with the timestamped heart rate spikes, the pattern was clear. She had paused near the cliff for an extended period, then taken an abrupt, jagged path toward the slope where Mark's body was later found. The movement didn't resemble a casual hike. It looked like someone navigating difficult terrain with urgency, possibly dragging something heavy. The pieces were coming together. A bloody hiking pole, financial desperation, a misleading timeline, and digital data that betrayed her version of events. But the most damning evidence was still hidden in the details of her smartwatch logs. When detectives discovered what those entries revealed, there would be no turning back for Emily Wilson. The full data extraction from Emily's smartwatch revealed more than anyone expected. Investigators discovered the watch had been quietly logging not just steps and heart rate, but also stress indicators and precise GPS coordinates throughout the day. These readings created a second-by-second timeline of her movements and emotional state. An invisible witness that had been on her wrist the entire time at first glance. The stress data seemed like a minor detail. But when analysts plotted it against the timeline of the hike, it told a chilling story. Emily's stress level spiked sharply at 9:10 a.m., nearly an hour and a half before she reported Mark's fall. The numbers didn't dip again until 9:40. That 30-minute block matched the period when her step count dropped to 0 and her heart rate surged. To detectives, this wasn't the pattern of someone enjoying a scenic hike. It looked like a person frozen in panic, consumed by adrenaline while something critical unfolded. Then came the GPS overlay. It traced Emily's exact route across the mountain. The data showed a deliberate stop at the cliffside where Mark's phone had last pinged. She remained there for 22 minutes, pacing back and forth in short, repetitive paths. After that, the route shifted sharply toward the slope where Mark's body was found. The abrupt change of direction and uneven pacing told analysts one thing. She wasn't casually walking. She was moving erratically, possibly dragging or repositioning something heavy. The watch also tracked elevation changes. Between 9:30 and 9:50, Emily's elevation fluctuated in ways that didn't match normal hiking patterns. The dips and rises indicated she had climbed down and back up in quick succession, suggesting she may have scouted or staged the fall site before moving on. These micro details, invisible to the naked eye, became the cornerstone of the case. While technology told part of the truth, investigators wanted context. They dug into Emily's digital life beyond the hike. Her emails and search history painted a troubling picture. Weeks before the trip, she had visited websites comparing the best hiking trails for beginners and articles on common accidents on mountain trails. One chilling query stood out. How far can someone fall and survive? Combined with her recent life insurance increase, the searches hinted at premeditation. Meanwhile, forensic testing on the hiking pole confirmed blood and tissue consistent with Mark's injuries. There were no fingerprints other than Emily's. Detectives believed the pole had been the weapon used during an argument near the cliff. After striking Mark, Emily likely dragged or guided him toward the slope, shoving him down to simulate an accidental fall. The evidence was compelling, but investigators wanted one more nail in the coffin: proof Emily intentionally misled rescuers about the timeline. They got it from a tiny but crucial feature on her smartwatch: workout mode logs. Emily had started a custom workout session at 8:12 a.m., intending to track her hike. The session ended abruptly at 9:44 a.m., right after her stress levels peaked, and before her frantic 2-mile sprint toward the trailhead began. Why would someone stop recording their hike in the middle of the trail? Detectives believed she turned it off because she knew what happened next wasn't part of a normal workout. It was part of a crime. Armed with this timeline, investigators were ready to act. But Emily's behavior in the days after the incident revealed even more about her state of mind. She wasn't mourning. She was planning something far more desperate. And when police finally moved in, they discovered just how close she had come to disappearing forever. When detectives closed in on Emily Wilson, they expected resistance, but what they found went beyond nervous denial. 2 weeks after the incident, she was already preparing to vanish. Officers arrived at her suburban home with an arrest warrant and discovered her standing in the living room, a half-packed suitcase open at her feet. Inside were rolls of cash, a passport, and a one-way ticket to Mexico scheduled for the following morning. The evidence suggested she knew the walls were closing in, and she intended to run before they fell completely. Her calm demeanor during initial questioning had crumbled over time. Detectives noticed she avoided interviews, claiming exhaustion and grief, but her financial activity told another story. Large withdrawals, canceled appointments, and a sudden decision to list her car for sale indicated panic beneath the surface. Investigators suspected she had realized that technology, her own smartwatch, was turning against her. In court, prosecutors methodically dismantled her version of events. The data from her smartwatch became the centerpiece of the case. They displayed charts showing the heart rate spikes at 9:10 a.m., the 30-minute pause in movement, and the sudden burst of speed hours before she claimed to have gone for help. The GPS trail sealed her fate. It clearly showed 2 significant locations: the cliffside where Mark's phone had last pinged and the steep slope where his body was staged. This wasn't a straight hike with an accidental fall. It was a map of deception. Experts testified about how stress monitoring features captured her emotional state in real time. They explained that the device registered prolonged periods of extreme tension during the critical window, consistent with someone experiencing a violent confrontation, not a relaxing hike. When prosecutors added the elevation fluctuations and the abrupt end to her workout session, the jury saw a digital blueprint of the crime unfold in front of them. Then came the financial motive. Bank records showed Emily was drowning in over $80,000 of debt. 2 months before the trip, she quietly increased Mark's life insurance coverage to $1.5 million without his knowledge. Combined with her searches about fall survival rates and hiking accidents, the evidence portrayed a chilling level of premeditation. But the most haunting moment came when prosecutors revealed the recovered hiking pole. The blood and tissue traces matched Mark's injuries. Emily's fingerprints were the only ones present, and forensic experts testified that the smaller wound on Mark's temple aligned perfectly with the pole's tip. This detail erased any lingering doubt that his death resulted from a simple slip. The jury deliberated for less than a day. Emily Wilson was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, she stared straight ahead, her face pale and expressionless. The same woman who believed she could outsmart investigators with a staged accident had been undone by a device meant to track her fitness goals. For detectives, the case served as a stark reminder of how technology has changed crime solving. The smartwatch became an unintentional witness, recording data so precise that it told the story Emily tried to bury in the wilderness. What she thought was a remote, silent place turned out to be filled with digital echoes, heartbeats, steps, stress levels, all betraying the truth that Mark's death was not the tragic accident it first appeared to be. It was a carefully plotted scheme unraveled by the smallest details, leaving behind a chilling lesson. In the modern world, even the simplest accessory can become the loudest voice in a courtroom. Secrets no longer die in the forest. They live on in the data we carry every day.